Hi, I'd like to thank you for being here. Um, Many old fishermen in the Great Lakes region, especially around Lake Erie, remember a fish that, despite it having been the cornerstone of Lake Erie's commercial fishing industry for decades, with tens of millions of pounds being taken every year, and up until mere decades ago, it was the most highly prized food fish among recreational fishermen of the region. It's now so little known and obscure that it's not mentioned as inhabiting any lakes or rivers, not mentioned on the Wikipedia page of the family it belongs to, or that of its closest relative, and the most discourse around it is debating whether or not it even existed to begin with. Allow me introduce you to the lost fish that might not have even been there to begin with. Of the 107 fish species present in Lake Erie, most of them are mostly unknown to the average person, the average fisherman, maybe even the average biologist in the region, um, because many of them are very small species which are of no practical use for food or sport fishing and are, as such, they're forgotten. But among the most well known families of fish in this area is the pike perch, zander, or just perch family. On the DNR page for Lake Erie, it lists that the species of the Zander family currently present in the lake are walleye and its smaller, more elusive cousin, the sauger. Both of these are known as the best food fish in the region. More so the walleye, however. From New York to Minnesota, you'll find people who swear that the walleye is the best tasting fish around. Massive statues have been erected in its honor, and festivals are held for it every year. And any good fisherman today would agree that there are two present species of pike perch in Lake Erie. However, some older fishermen, like real old timers who kind of remember the late 60s, tell you that there's a third, better tasting cousin to the walleye, one that's currently missing from any guidebook or list of fish present in the Great Lakes, and apart from the memories of those old timers, has all but disappeared from the public conscious. First described as a unique species in 1926 by ichthyologist Carl Levitt Hubbs, and later downgraded to a subspecies of the walleye, the blue pike, Sander glaucus, was distinguished from the former through morphometric studies or analysis in the difference of the visible form of two animals. They compared it to the walleye, and the blue pike would regularly and consistently have larger eyes located higher upon its head and a larger distance between its eyes, as well as being a dark blue to silvery color, and averaging about a pound or so less than your average walleye, only reaching maybe 3 or 4, where a walleye would be 5 or 6. Um, the blue pike would have been a nocturnal predator similar to the walleye and would have probably fed mostly on smaller fish and invertebrates at the bottom of the lake. The blue pike was also reported to inhabit deeper areas of the lake than the walleye, and not venture into the shallows as much. Up until the 1960s, the blue pike was a cornerstone of Lake Erie's commercial fishing industry and was extremely common table fare in many restaurants and homes. The collapse of the blue pike population was unprecedentedly quick. The small fish went from thriving with an excess of 20 million pounds being taken per year throughout the 50s and only 79,000 pounds being taken in 1964. They were listed as endangered in 1967 and extinct in 1983. To the uninitiated, this probably seems like pretty cut and dry. They were overfished and they disappeared, but that's not really the case. The walleye was around back then, still is today, and has always been harvested in the same numbers as the blue pike. It's still thriving. The real killer of the blue pike turned out to be the not just the overfishing, which definitely did contribute. The overfishing definitely did contribute to it. However, the real nail in the coffin for the blue pike was the loss of its spawning habitat. Expansion of the industry along the shores of Lake Erie destroyed the coastal areas and marshlands used by the blue pike, which comparatively inhabited a much smaller, had a smaller population and inhabited a smaller area than the walleye. Um, so although the walleye lost some of its spawning habitat and was kind of able to push on, the blue pike basically lost all of it, and just because of that and overfishing, they disappeared. Um, and the last known blue pike ever was caught in 1962. Um, the blue pike, though, a lot of people have raised the question of, is it really gone? If you just look up the blue pike on the internet, the first things you're going to see is it still here? Is it gone? And another debate is, did it ever exist in the first place? I was able to track down a study done by Carol Stepien that determined that the blue pike was not actually a distinct species and was not even a subspecies, and downgraded the blue pike to a color morph of the walleye. Color morphs are when an animal, although being the same species, is distinct visually from other members of its species. So think like albino or a melanistic animal are good examples of that. However, because those don't have large numbers and don't tend to succeed, they don't have a large population like the blue pike did. But because the blue pike had a color morph that actually helped it survive in a certain environment, it survived and thrived in there, and it had its own sort of population of this separate color morph than the walleye, which they were both distinct. And basically what happened to the blue pike is that it didn't really disappear. They didn't all die out, but their lifestyle was no longer advantageous. The lifestyle that was aided by their specific physiognomy that they did not share with the yellow walleye. So the darker silvery blue coloring and the eyes on the top of the head and smaller size no longer aided their lifestyle, because their lifestyle was no longer viable due to habitat destruction. So they just bred with the existing. The story of the blue pike is a tragedy of an animal that, while not being a distinct species, was a distinct animal that is now lost. And I think it's a very important thing to be taught. I think that obviously in the Great Lakes region, it's something that needs to be known about to prevent the walleye from following in these footsteps and disappearing as well. And while they're stable in many populations from Minnesota to Maine, their numbers are going down, and especially in the Great Lakes, and caution needs to be taken to prevent it from being exterminated. Now, there does remain some hope for the blue pike, though. I know I said it's completely gone extinct, but there is something there. In a 2008 article, it was reported that the blue pike had been secretly stocked in a lake in northern Minnesota in 1969 in an attempt to preserve the historic species. A reported 525 fingerlings were stocked, and on several surveys conducted on the lake, they had captured one or more blue pike. However, as much as many of us would like to believe it, the name of the lake is unknown, and the validity of the story still remains unknown. A much more likely scenario, though, for the survival of the blue pike is that somewhere in a smaller lake connecting to Lake Erie, there does exist a small isolated population of blue pike that have yet to be found. There are quite a few little-known lakes that connect to Lake Erie that have the right conditions to house blue pike, but it's unknown if any survive today because we just don't know. I was able to track down a couple posts on walleye fishing forums from 2003 claiming to have caught a blue pike, and on the same thread, a post linking to an image gallery of caught blue pike after their presumed extinction date. However, the image gallery is unfortunately now defunct, and I could not access it And well, unlikely, I think I and many others would like to believe that the blue pike still thrives in an undisclosed lake in Minnesota or in an unknown watershed of Lake Erie. Thank you. If you watched all the way to the end, I'd really like to say thank you. That's it. Yeah.